Andy Hrovat, welcome back to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm so excited to have you back on. You were one of our first guests, and now are like our main introduction horse. Man, I can't tell you how many people you put me in touch with. It's been awesome, and yeah, man. How were the Big Tens?
Big Times were awesome. It was cool to get back to Ann Arbor. Saw a couple buddies I haven't seen in a while. Herbert, Jake, and Stephen Fisher. Mainly just hung out with them. Saw a couple other guys I wrestled with, but no, the wrestling was awesome. The environment's it's so cool how like you can see like how the Big Ten Network has really influenced the championship. Because when I was wrestling, it was definitely not as many people as there are now, and it's really neat to see all the fans participating and the schools have more following and people are watching it online and on the Big Ten Network, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
so cool.
And for folks who maybe don't know your story, when were you at Michigan? What were your years?
1998 to 2002.
2002, and then Olympian in 08. But so were you there when that weight cutting incident happened?
That was my senior year of high school, and then that sparked the changes of the weigh-ins, which when I was a senior, they were 24 hours before. My freshman year was the first year they went to 1 hour weigh-ins for dual meets, 2 hours for tournaments.
Got it. Okay. And so you got to Michigan then, and I almost had your buddy on the podcast. We're going to reschedule it, but Gray Maynard, was he there at the same time?
Well, I went to high school with Gray. Gray went to Michigan State.
Went to Michigan State. Duh, yeah. But you guys were at St Eds.
Everybody confuses that. Everyone thinks we went to college together, high school together, but
it's going to get rescheduled for tomorrow. So who knows the order of when the episodes are released, but bottom line, can't wait to get him on. The guy's a savage, still in shape, dude. Right, shredded.
Yeah, he's a freak. He owns a gym. If anybody just wants to have that life, own a gym. You move all day long.
Right. So your St. Eds team must have been crazy then.
Yeah. So my junior year at St. Eds, we had 6 future NCAA All-Americans and 1 round of 12. So basically half our team was an All-American or fighting to be an All-American. So it was myself. Well, Yoshi was a senior. When I was a junior, Yoshi was a senior. He was a 3-time at Penn. I was a 3-time at Michigan. Gray was 3-time at Michigan State. Kozicki was a 1-timer at Michigan. Mark Jane, I believe, was a 2 or 3. I think 3 at Illinois.
At least, yeah.
Kozicki, or I already said Kozicki. And then Bertine was a 4-time All-American at Michigan, 2-time champ. And then Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth was round of 12, I think, 2 or 3 times.
Dude, those are some studs.
So he was in that same weight class at NCAAs where St. Ed's had 3 All-Americans at 157, Gray, Yoshi, and Bertine. None of them wrestled each other, and Nemeth was round of 12 that year, and neither of those 3 wrestled Nemeth, which is crazy.
All at 157.
All at 157.
That is nuts. That has to be a record for All-Americans from a single high school at a weight.
Yeah, it has to be.
To be. That's crazy.
3 All-Americans and one who lost in the blood round. That's insane. And none of them wrestled each other. That's the even crazier stat.
Yeah. I mean, especially this year, where you look at some of the first-round matchups, like all the repeat matches, there's quite a few of them. But, I mean, for guys from the same high school, not to overlap. So, when you were in Ohio State, how many classes were there?
3.
3. Same as it is now?
Yeah.
And you guys, that's the Walsh years too, though, right? Was Walsh powering through then too?
Yeah. So they're actually making a documentary on it. The Eds Walsh rivalry, Ben Hatta and I think maybe Greenhalgh, the Sonny's son. I forget his name.
Okay. Yeah, Ben's come on before and he's talked about it, but I don't know if anyone else is doing it. But yeah, I can't wait for it.
I don't think he's doing it by himself, but he's doing it. And but no, so the reason I went to St. Ed's was my sister was going to Lake Catholic in a decent D2 school. And so like the Brecksville coach, Todd Haverdale, he's got a great program at Brecksville. He was at that school. I think Voinovich's son or dad went to that school, a little older than me, but I remember watching him when I was a kid, the Oklahoma State wrestler. So I watched, so they went to Lake Catholic, but then I practiced with them as a 7th grader, practiced part of the year as an 8th grader with them, and they still wanted me to practice with the freshmen for a 3rd year in a row, and I wasn't able to wrestle varsity. So when I went to visit St Eds, that was the week of the Walsh Eds match. ESPN was there filming the practice. Like, you know, it's like 1 and 2 in the country. And then I have this other school that's like, yeah, you can wrestle freshman next year. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that's not going to happen. And so I was like, man, and so that just drew me. The Eds Walsh rivalry just drew me, number 1, number 2 in the country. And I didn't know anything about high school before that because there's no internet. You know, even being in Cleveland, it's not like I was, you know, in tune with all what's going on at high school. You know, I didn't know who was on Eds' team and all that stuff. And so I ended up just choosing Eds, but it was obviously the best decision I ever made.
Dude, what a week to go there and check it out.
Right? Yeah, it was crazy.
Now in Ohio, is there like a very well-structured and organized middle school state tournament that the Catholic schools will pluck kids from?
Well, no, now they have it. Not when I was in. So like the craziest thing is I didn't compete much my 7th grade year, competed very little my 8th grade year because I was 145 pounds. And when kids tournaments, there's not a lot of kids there. You know, it's like, but when you get to high school, it's like, then you have 4 years of kids. And, you know, so I didn't even place at the city tournament of Cleveland at the CYO tournament. Like, I lost twice at that tournament. And, you know, obviously you go through growing phases and, you know, your career goes up and down, but like, man, I went from not even placing in the city of Cleveland as an 8th grader. And at that tournament, another reason I went to St. Ed's was Joe Silvestro, who you had on the podcast. He was officiating that tournament, came up to me and my dad and was talking to me. And he's like, no, I know you're thinking about going to Ed's and, you know, this didn't go well, but blah, you know, like he just talked to me and we had a great talk, and that like set me up for at Eds. And then like the very next year, I went to the district tournament and I ended up losing to the state champ by a point and the state runner up by 2 points. So I didn't even qualify for state, but I went from not placing in the city of Cleveland to losing the top 2 guys in the state the very next year. And it's not like anything changed, you know, like dramatically. I just got in a better room and was able to get in a better groove of competing and training. But it's just wild because it's like now as a kids coach, as you see it as kids and they're like, they could lose 1 week and they're like, I'm never going to be good enough for college. It's like, you know, like everybody gets that attitude. Everyone has that hard time with their own mindset. And it's just like, man, like, I remember when I had that problem, you know?
Well, even now, like as a coach, if you see a kid that goes like you said, you know, doesn't win the city tournament, and then you're going to tell me in 5 years, he's headed to a D1 school, scholarship, All-American. It's like, you wouldn't even believe that, you know? And it's just good to hear these stories because I think kids put so much pressure on themselves and it's a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah, especially when you have success, right? So like right now I'm training a kid, he's 11, just turned 12 actually, like last week or 2 weeks ago. And he's not getting a move and he's like, I'm never going to be good enough for college. And it's like, yeah, you're right. You're not good enough for high school, man. You're 12, you know, like, and he's like, I'm supposed to be good. And I'm like, no, that's what your old coaches told you. I never once told you were good. Like, I just need you to learn the sport. Like, good will come later. You're 12. You don't need to be good right now. You need to be a student.
Right.
And it's like so many coaches put so much emphasis on these kids stuff. It's just ridiculous. And it's like, then it's like, you never have that ability to fail without questioning yourself. You're like, oh, I won a state championship when I was a rookie. And it's like, where do you go from there if you lose?
Yeah.
A lot of psychology and like, there's a lot of things in our sport that are terrible for people, right? Like your podcast is about how it changed your life, but there's a huge subsect of people that it ruined their life.
Huge. And there's so many people we all know who are wrestlers who were, you know, the extreme kid in class. And after wrestling, they went down the path of like drugs or crime. And it's like, that's a lot of people. And, you know, we don't hear from those guys so often unless they're able to turn around, but most don't, you know?
Right.
And your experience coaching is many years coaching at the senior level, but most interesting is the time you spent in the motherland. So tell folks about how that all came about and kind of the background that got you to that trip to Russia.
Yeah. So, I talk about a lot on the show, but, I was told before the Olympics, you work hard, you're going to win. And it's like, yeah, to a point. But if you're doing all the wrong stuff in training, like at some point you got to do the right training, because no amount of hard work, no amount of studying hard on history is going to help you in a calculus exam, and that's the easiest way to put it. And it's like, when you're not doing the right things in training and your training isn't structured and focused like the other team, they have a leg up on you. And it's like, I saw that. And in 2007, Russia won 7 out of 8 weight classes. They lost 1 match. And it's like, how are we going to outwork them to go win? And then in 2008, we had 1 medal, and barely anybody else did anything. And we only won a handful of matches in Beijing. And so I was like, I'm just going to go and see what they're doing, because it's obviously not what we're doing. And doping aside, because I know Americans have doped in the past, and doping aside, it's not the doping, it's the training that they did. And so I just went and submerged myself, and I threw away my ego, because everybody's like, well, this is how I did it. And in our sport, just like the kids, like we talked about it, because that's a big thing that I'm on a kick right now, is health of kids. We get on this kick. We're like, no, this is how I did it. And it's like, misery wants misery as company. And they're like, well, I mean, you probably know, like a couple of weeks ago, I threw this tournament director under the bus, because multiple tournaments he ran this year are going past 11 o'clock at night with children. And people are like, well, I did it when I was a kid, so everybody should have to do it still to this day. It's like, well, I trained that way. I just hard work and put my nose to the grindstone, and I did it. We didn't have to have anything calculated or structured, but I did it. It's like, you should do it like I do it. And every coach gets in their program and they're like, this is the way I did it. And so you're going to do it the way I did it. And it's like, I had to throw all that out. And you know how big of a risk that is, to be like, I'm going to throw everything out that I learned in my whole life, and I'm going to go all in on this new thing I just learned. And I did. And I produced champions at every level. And that I had to take my whole self out of it. It's not what I do. I learned somebody else's training system, and the people who actually go through it, the work that they do is why they're winning, right? I'm structuring them and I'm giving them this overview, but I couldn't have been happier with that decision to throw everything I learned my whole life, because I had some great coaches, right? But they only did, hey, this is what I did, so you're going to do what I did. And it's like, well, then it just becomes a lineage of like, you do this, I do, you doing it because I did it. It's like, well, did that work out for you? Because a lot of my coaches, it didn't work out for them, and they never questioned, hey, why didn't it work out? Because at some point you got to be like, I couldn't have worked harder. I literally could have worked harder. Like I had a coach that, like, it's hard to throw people. I don't want to throw people under the bus, but McFarland lost twice in the NCAA finals. He believes if he worked harder, he would have won those matches. And it's like, well, at what point? He worked his ass off. Joe was one of the hardest working people I ever knew. Like as a coach, as an athlete, like you hear the stories, it's like you weren't going to work harder. So at some point you got to be like, well, it's not just working harder. What was I doing in that work that could have made me win those championships or the world title? And it's like, I love the guy, but that is like a lot of people's perspective. And you see it, you see how people train teams and programs, and they train and lead people with their own trauma. And it's disturbing for me as an outsider to watch and be like, oh, these people are reliving their own trauma of losing. And the only thing they've ever been told their whole life is, well, just work harder. And so they just start pushing their teams. And we got teams leading, going into NCAAs. And this is the thing that drives me crazy. And it's perfect that this is the week of, is that these coaches will push their athletes, right? But then after the end of the season, they're like, well, did you work hard enough? It's like, well, if that's your only gauge of why I'm succeeding or not, you're not a good coach. Because I just pulled this up today at the jiu-jitsu pro training I helped run. And it's like, no, in the art of war, the general who makes the most calculations wins. So I would love if I could give a questionnaire to every head coach and be like, how much time did you spend in these 5 positions this year, wrestling live and teaching? Upper body, head inside single, head outside single, fail attack, and top bottom. How much time did you actually spend just wrestling those positions and just teaching those positions? Because those are the five main positions in the whole sport of college wrestling. And so if you can't answer that question, how many minutes your kids wrestled over the last 3 months in those positions, if you can't answer how many times you've spent teaching those positions, don't ever expect your kids to win. And don't think they're just going to win because of hard work. Yeah, they're going to be able to maybe find success once in a blue moon because everybody else is training that crazy way. So nobody's actually calculating anything other than, my guess, Penn State, maybe Iowa, but most coaches won't be able to give you any estimate of the amount of time they spent in the most important positions, let alone the offense defense. If I just gave the offense defense to some schools and I said, look, if you just did this part of the practice, your athletes will be better off for it. And people won't even do that. It's bonkers.
How much of a college practice do you think is on autopilot for some of the coaches, where it's just the same routine and flow and not really focusing on certain areas?
Oh, I'm guessing it's almost all of them. And the amount of college coaches that just throw their plan up after a bad weekend, they're like, shit, we wrestled bad, we're going to change everything. It's like, you actually didn't know where we were going, did you? You were just playing it week by week. You know, you were just waiting for that bad week so you could rip it up and start over. You know, it's like, I would never do that. Like, I had my 3 months, like when I was training the highest level guys at the Cliff King Club, I had my 3 months leading up to the US Open. I had it planned out. I didn't change one practice. I didn't care how they were doing, because just like Kale, he's just like, I get it. That's why he doesn't even coach when he's coaching. He's already done the work. He could just sit there, which is what I do when I coach my little kids. Like, coaches think they're going to tell you what to do in the middle of the match. It's like, it's already a hectic environment with like the craziness of the fight. It's like, they're not just going to be like, oh, he told me to grab the left wrist. It's like, Kale already coached them how to do everything. He coached their mindset. He coached their technique. You don't need to coach the kid while they're on the mat. And it's like, you see those coaches just screaming and screaming. And then the ones who are like, attack, you're losing, attack. It's like, well, when was the last time you actually taught them how to attack when they're losing? And like their mindset of that. And it's like, and then they just, when they lose and they're not doing what they're supposed to, the coaches are frustrated. Like, it's like, that's on you. You're frustrated with yourself, not on your own athlete, because you didn't train them well enough to do and have the mindset. And that's why Iowa wins. Like, I don't agree with all the way Iowa trains, but at least they train with the mindset of like, this is the Iowa style. This is what we do. This is how we win matches. And that's why they're so successful at winning matches. They don't win matches because of their technique, right? Tom and Terry were unbelievable technical wrestlers, but Iowa right now is not winning matches because of their technique and their offensive mindset. They're winning matches because of they believe that the Iowa style could at least keep it close enough to keep them in the matches, and that they don't typically lose those because they're tough enough. And case in point, look at the Okie State match. They were up the first 5 matches with less than a minute left with like a 1-point lead on all 5 of them, and the Iowa style won. Right.
That was a crazy duel, mate, in terms of just they just kind of rolled them in that one.
Yeah. I mean, Oklahoma State couldn't get anything off, and they're one of the people, same with Iowa. Like, if I gave my offense, defense, live attack battles to them, like both those schools would take off. Like, it would help their wrestling immensely. I could give those 2 programs a 5-minute battle, 5 1-minute battles, and their wrestling would take off through the roof.
And this is based on, so as we mentioned, you spent a year living in Russia, in Ossetia, which is one of the regions there that's a hotbed, in terms of wrestling worldwide. It's just amazing the kind of Olympians and medalists they produce. So what do you think would be shocking to Americans to see like some of the big differences of like how a practice is structured and how development is structured?
Well, they never talk about intensity, right? So like, I have the 12-year-old kid that I told you about earlier. Like, I have a group of those kids, right? And their coaches, they would come in and they would be like, okay, we're drilling. It's like they tried 100 miles an hour. They don't do anything right. And they're like, well, no, this is what my other coaches want. It's like, we don't we don't pay focus to the small details. We're just like, do it hard, do it fast, do it long, and continue to do that day in and day out. And it's like, we don't have a structure, literally. Like, you could go to NCAAs and every team is going to be doing something completely different for that first round warm-up. And kids on teams within the same team are going to be doing different routines. It's like, how did you just train a college-age kid to go through the whole season, but yet you're going to have 2 different warm-up routines for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 different warm-up routines that 5 different kids are like, okay, this is how I warm up for a match. This is how I warm up for a match. It's like, in Russia, they're like, no. This is how we all warm up. And when you're done, you're ready. You don't need anything else. This is it, right? They develop a routine. And it's so fun. I had 2 kids that went to the Tulsa duels last weekend, and they were 7th graders, like 13 years old. And they were on a team from California, I believe. And that team had 2 teams, like 35 athletes. And the coach goes, okay, the day before the tournament, okay, we're going to do a warm up and then we're going to run through a little practice. So go ahead, start getting warmed up. Coaches, okay, start getting warmed up. And they start jogging, and my kids are like, and they're 7th graders. I put them in my high school practice because I don't have kids big enough for them. And so my high school practice, I said, look, I can't train you guys because I overlapped them on purpose. So this is my room. So I have 1,000 square foot of mat on the bottom.
Wow.
1,000 square or 3,000 square feet on top, the blue mats. And so I said, okay, well, this 1,000 square feet, my high school group could do the warm up on that mat to overlap. So at 6, they do the warm up on their own. I trained them. They know everything, all 72 movements. And so anybody could lead it on any given day. And I'm ending with the little kids so that the high school kids could leave earlier, right? Because you only have so much time in the gym. Well, my 7th graders go to this dual tournament, and the coaches don't know how to do the warm up. They're just like, go do something, get warmed up for this. And then all the other kids know nothing. They don't know a routine. And my 2 kids were like, all right, we got this, guy. Start jogging, jog backwards, jog circle to the right. So they run through the whole warm up. And then I had 2 other kids, that 12-year-old and another 12-year-old. They were on 2 other teams at the same thing. And the first day they were wrestling, parents started seeing my kids do the warm up. The 2 12-year-olds do the warm up just on their own before the mat. And the dad told me, goes, the next day before the second day of wrestling, I heard the other dad saying, hey, go follow that kid. He knows what he's doing.
And it's 72 movements.
Yeah, it's 72 different things. And he's 12. but I let those 12-year-olds go in my high school practice too. They have to do both if they want to enter. But they know the warm up and they know what the standard is to be like, hey, I do this, I'm ready. Not a guess. And we have college coaches who can't even train their team to do a warm up that will automatically guarantee that they're prepared for a match. They mix it up every day. Someday they drill for a warm up, someday they jog. And it's like, the biggest thing is like, in the US that would throw people off is like, again, it's the intensity. In Russia, you just jog and, move. Like in the US, they're like, we're going to burn our lungs out to get ready for this practice. Like, what does that even mean? As a coach, you don't even know what burning your lungs out means. Is there a scientific reason why you do that? There's no scientific reason why you do that. But people are like, there's cobwebs. And I'm like, we gotta burn the lungs out to be able to wrestle later. It's like, what do you mean? You have to move. You don't even have to burn your lungs out. You don't.
So in Russia, they wouldn't associate the word intensity with wrestling.
No, it's a fight. It's a fight, but it's not like, they're not like, oh, you gotta be intense. If you're not intense, you're not gonna win. It's like, no, theirs is like, you have technique and you have your physical ability. If a match gets heated, it gets heated. You never have to question if somebody is physically fit enough and somebody wants to win enough, if they're going to be able to bring the intensity. If you have to question that, then something's really wrong with you. We have a terrible mindset. Like, we have a good mindset because it creates champions out of attrition, right? But that's just like World War II when they had that little area in France that they called the meat grinder. Just like, we're going to put people in and we're going to cheer them up. But we got millions of people that we could just do this to. And it's like,
a couple of guys make it through.
That's the case in America, right? So I got kicked out of and we could bring this topic up, but I got kicked out of the Texas Youth State Tournament. not because I was yelling at anybody, not because I was yelling at an official, coach, or anybody, or kid. I don't even coach when I sit at those tournaments, right? Because I coach them in the room and then I'll talk to them after. Well, I got kicked out because at 3:00, when the tournament was definitely not going to end on time, I asked them, hey, do you have safety procedures? These are children. When is it safe to stop wrestling for the night? And they thought I was crazy. And then at 11:00, this guy was watching what I was told were 9 and 10-year-olds. They could have been the tiniest 11-year-olds, but they were like 60-pound kids, right? And they're wrestling at 11:00 at night. And I was like, why do you think this is safe to wrestle at 11:00 at night for kids this age? You didn't like my answer earlier. You didn't give me an answer earlier. He said, he straight up said, you go through Safe Sport to coach. I have no safety procedures that I have to follow to be a tournament director. None, zero. These kids are going to wrestle till 11:45. So I had a 12-year-old kid, and this is the craziest part about that day. I had a 12-year-old kid. He wrestled in the very first round when that division started. I'm actually right after this, I have a private with him. He's homeschooled and he's going to Estonia next week for freestyle. But he wrestled the first match at like 6:50, right? And they messed his bracket up. And as soon as he walked off the mat, he had a bloody nose, got hit in the face, like accidentally, had a bloody nose, walked off the mat. They were calling him again. He walked off one mat, went to the other mat, wrestled back-to-back matches, 0 time in between. And then he was the second last match. He won his state title at 11:45. And it would have been the last match, but because the kid he beat had the wrestle for true second, the kid he beat at 11:45 walked off the mat and wrestled a true second after he just lost in the finals. Well, that kid is also at the gym because he's also homeschooled, and they're going to Estonia together. So I had these two kids, and the feedback I got from people was like, your kids need to be tougher. It's like he wrestled back-to-back matches at 6:50. He won a state title at 11:45. He's still 11. Tell me how I have to train someone to be tougher than that.
Well, it wouldn't be. It's surprising. I did hear about this incident, and it's surprising to me that they can't expect the demand of kids to come in. My only problem with how Texas
they take money, they know the formula, but they keep taking money and they keep pushing the boundaries.
But what I'm saying is it should be like a qualifier. Like you should have like regionals around the state and then sectionals.
Correct.
And then,
but the wrestling mindset is more is better. More is always better. More training's better. More intensity is better. So, hey, why don't we get 1,000, 2,000 kids? And it's not even that. They get barely 1,000 kids, but then they have double entries and they're like, hey, we're breaking records. It's like, no, you're breaking records because you're giving people the opportunity to win multiple state titles. It's like you're just watering it down. So,
this is my other problem.
No, it should be a small bracket. It should be a very elite small bracket, and there should be like, you should have respect for people's times. Be like, hey, this is our sessions. And I immediately, and this is what these people at Texas didn't know, is they're like, oh, this guy, we kicked him out. He's not going to do anything. I was driving to Colorado to go snowboarding immediately after. So I made a pit stop in Colorado Springs, and Pete Isaias, the head of events for USA Wrestling. Pete, how many times have you had an event? He runs all the national tournaments. Pete, how many times have you had an event go past 11? One time. This guy did it at the state tournament in McKinney. He did in Fort Worth. Like and these are the only ones I know, and this is just my region. So you could just assume all these other regions are also having these problems in the state. And it's like, no, there's a formula to be able to do that. Right. And it's like, they just take money with knowing they're not going to be able to perform the service. And then they just groom you into thinking like, no, this is normal. All wrestling tournaments should end at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. It's like, absolutely not. That's not normal. And now I'm in the process of working with Tony Black, the membership, Pete, and hesitantly Rich Bender on getting a nationals stop time, right? Like kids at certain ages shouldn't be able to wrestle past certain times of the night. And if like you see like it's coming up to that, it's like, okay, we're done with constellations. We can't get everybody in. We're just going to see who the winner is. They're like, oh, well, we can't do that. Only the losers of the semis are going to be able to wrestle back for third. Like,
yeah,
you got to have certain things in a place to be like, okay, yeah, we could finish out. We could get to the champion. But at some point, the tournament directors have to be held accountable for taking people's money and not being able to give them the service, because it's an easy calculation. Participants, number of mats, number of officials. Calculate it. Everybody else knows how to run an event.
And like I was saying earlier, to me, if it's a state tournament, you shouldn't be able to just sign up. You have to qualify. To me, that sounds more just like a big open. But that aside, I've also heard it.
It's a money grab.
But I've also heard
novice, Ryan. They have a first year and then a first and second year.
This is my problem. Like, you shouldn't be able to enter in multiple divisions there. So I like that Texas has a rookie division or whatever it's called, like a first year division, an intermediate, then an advanced. You should not be able to wrestle in multiple divisions at the same tournament. That just seems counterintuitive to me. That's crazy.
Correct. And then you have the girls who could do rookie, novice girls, open girls. Some girls could do 4 events. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely not prepared.
How were the youth tournaments in Russia?
Well, they don't have a lot, but now I see that they're starting to mimic some American stuff. That's why they have younger kids that they were promoting pre-COVID. I don't think they're still kind of promoting these kids, like that little Dagestani kid they were like claiming was the next Sadulayev.
Yeah.
But it's like that's never been their MO. And I did go to one tournament there, like 7th and 8th graders, and that's like one of the first times they're competing. It was real sloppy, right? For 7th and 8th graders in the nation's best region, in the world's best region of wrestling, but they don't compete a lot.
Yeah, retention rates, I wonder what they are in wrestling.
Terrible. 50% in USA Wrestling, pretty much national. National USA Wrestling, I think, has around 275, 300 members. They lose about half every year, and then they get a new half.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if we captured half of, like, 125, if we captured just 10% of that, right, of 125,000 people leaving every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 12,500 people, right, if my math is correct. Over 4 years, that's 50,000 extra people that are sticking with the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got 350,000.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at it like that, because there used to be a little bit of a badge of honor we wore that we would drive people out. Started with 30, but got them down to 15. These are the real killers.
So many people still have that mindset. So many high school coaches have that mindset. Man, I have a 4-year-old girl who just quit gymnastics to join my wrestling team because her cousin does it. Little girl. And she does the one day she didn't do anything, and her parents were like, hey, you got to do what coach tells you. And I was like, went to the parent, hey, bud, like, I don't care if she does it. She's out there having fun with her cousin.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, as she keeps coming back, that's what I need. If I force her to do something and she's like, I didn't want to do that, I don't want to do that, she's going to be like, well, I don't want to do wrestling anymore. That's maybe why she quit gymnastics. So it's like, it's okay if they just sit there. And I use my example with Kyle Massey all the time. Kyle Massey didn't do the circuit at the end of training, ever, when I was coaching the Cliff King Wrestling Club. But he wasn't there to win. He was there to train with Kuhn. Mm-hmm. So am I going to make the guy who's just a training partner and who wants to learn and have fun to compete a couple years before he gets a full-time job as a university coach? Do I have to force him as a 25-year-old to be like, Kyle, get your circuit in? It's like, no, he didn't want to do it. It's like, hey, it's okay. But I know his expectations. He wasn't lying to me, being like, hey, coach, I really want to win. But it's like, he was honest. He's like, I'm a training partner. I don't need to do those rope climbs.
Mm-hmm. And so do you think it's that the Russian technique and skill level is so superior that when they get to cadet European championships, by the time they're 15, 16, even though they've had far less matches than Americans, that the skill level is what keeps them even? Because, you know, you figure like a Bo Bassett, one of my favorites, by the time he got to the cadet worlds, he probably had 1,500 matches, maybe less, maybe more, but probably 1,500 legit. And the guys he's wrestling from Russia, probably less than 50.
Correct. And you could see that, and you could see why when they brought the cadets back, the Americans had the upper hand. Right. Mm-hmm. But you look at the senior, it's not the same way until just recently. Yeah. We got a great group of guys, but we don't have the depth they have. Case in point, David Taylor gets hurt. Who do we replace him with? Downey. That dude don't place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Who at David's weight in Russia? Right. So Sadulayev was gone. They've had a couple guys, but you're replacing one with the other, and they're getting bronzes. They're not beating David, but you're replacing multiple people and they're still medaling.
Mm-hmm.
Not being Yazdani, but they're medaling.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that. We don't have 3, 4, 5 guys in a weight that can medal. At the young kids, we do, for sure, because our young kids are primed and ready to go, especially at cadet. By the time juniors, you see it start slipping a little bit. By the time seniors, it starts slipping a little bit more. Granted, not now. We're in the highest point of American wrestling, but historically, you could see that.
And it's crazy because if you look back at that 04 team, and generally anything from 97 through 2012 is considered kind of a down period for USA Wrestling if you look at just how things were going. Like by August of 03, August of 04, heading into Athens, we hadn't had a world champion on the mat in like 5 years. Right. Slay won after Leopold testing. And I think the one before that might have been Les Sketches or
99. 99 we had. Stephen Neal won.
That's what I was going to say. Who's the guy who went to Patriots? Okay. Yeah. So, but the 04 team was good, and then.
Yeah, they had a lot of medals, but that was
a lot of medals. But that was an anomaly for that era.
Well, actually, 06 wasn't bad either.
06? Yeah, they
Russia. We had Zadok win. Zadok took second. Donnie took bronze. Sammy took bronze. Tali took fifth, maybe. But besides those 2 years, it was a rough patch.
Well, now we're seeing a lot of consistency. And do you think it's the RTCs? Do you think kids wrestling freestyle younger? Like, what do you think's the big change from that 2000s era to now?
Oh, for sure, it's the RTC. You have dedicated coaches, right? I mean, before I went to Michigan, before I retired, there was no dedicated coach for freestyle at any college.
Yeah, like 2003, you graduate college. What kind of money opportunities are available for you to train freestyle?
Nothing. It was at Michigan only, right? Because I couldn't go to any other college. So you either had to stay at your college you went to, or you had to go to Colorado Springs. There wasn't a lot of money at all, right? So like the RTCs are bringing money in, so more people are able to train longer. They have sponsorships. Social media has made it easier for them to make money through products and selling services. Easier for people to get a hold of you for camps. Like there's so many more things that have aided in that. I still don't think we have the depth because we don't have a systematic approach, but we do have more resources than any other country. We have more athletes than any other country except maybe India now. And they're about to surpass us with resources. They're about to surpass us with coaching. They're about to surpass us with the system. And India is going to be an interesting case because I honestly think within the next 8 years, it's going to be US, India, and Russia probably is the top three consistent year after year.
It is amazing to see a country say, we're going to get behind this sport 100%, whatever's needed, it's needed, and we're going to do it on a mass scale because they're obviously their population is tremendous.
Yeah, their population's huge, so they need to entertain their people. They need to give them something to do. And they looked at all the other sports and they were like, well, we have this traditional style. And once they saw some of those people leave the traditional style and have success internationally, they're like, oh, we could do this. And then after Shishil placed in 12, there was a mass exodus from the villages to the cities. And like, that was right when I was retiring, Shishil placed in 08, but I was helping them between 08 and 12 to get to Russia because they needed better coaching. And so I helped the Mittal Group, the steel company, who is one of their biggest sponsors, and they have this huge Olympic program. And so I helped the head of that get hooked up with Ossetians, and then they started buying Georgians and all these people to go coach for them. They actually asked me in 2000 to run the program for 8 years, and in 2028 picked their team. They wanted me to be the cadet coach from 2020 to 2024, and then work my way to be picking their full team by 2028. Originally, when they took the phone call, I thought they just wanted me to do their coach education. I was like, dude, I can't move to India for 8 years. Like, I'm not just going to go uproot my life. I was like, thank you for the offer. I appreciate it. But
right. Can you imagine though, having like that kind of numbers at your disposal and carte blanche to put in a system like that? I guess that's your biggest gripe is in the US, it's the club in this part of town is doing it different than this part of town. And there's no uniformity in the city, let alone the state, let alone the country. You're saying one of the reasons Russia's been so good is that during the Soviet era, they put these coaches all throughout the country and they were teaching the same system to the same kids. And over time, there's symmetry and everyone knows kind of similar skills, and it just creates more consistency.
Well, yeah, but yes. As you're saying that though, like it just became blatantly obvious to me that it's not just the training, it's the actual mindset of combat, right? Like we teach moves from start to finish, and it's like you're losing and you're like, okay, I got to shoot, and I got to shoot a high crotch, and I'm going to get it perfect, and I'm going to cut across to finish. And it's like, okay, no. In the Russian mindset, it's like, no, first step, you just got to attack and get to the damn legs. Okay, once you're there, it's like you think you're going to know what you could do, but when you attack, you're not going to be in the exact place where you thought you are. So then you just get there. And then when you get there, you're going to know what to do when you get there. It's like we have these perceived notions in our mind that we have to have things play out. They do things in stages, right? And it's a lot easier to manage and calculate a match when you do things in stages instead of when you do things from start to finish.
And that mindset is a big difference, like you said, because I remember you before compared to like more like problem solving versus like slamming your head against the wall.
Well, yeah, but just think about what I said with the offense defense, right? So think about if you just taught the mindset of offense defense, right? Like if you're wrestling, we have this mindset in America, attack, 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 attack. It's like never once are these coaches being like, hey, just wait, counterattack. Like, hey, see what they have. Wait, let them make the mistake, counterattack, score on them. Okay, score, then wait, then let them come back, then counterattack. You know, it's like they use these strategies of offense and defense to manage and manipulate these matches. When America, it's so easy when they get to the highest level, you're like, they're just going to attack you. So if you have a Russian wrestling an American, 9 times out of 10, they're like, okay, I'll just play defense right now, and then I'll just get to a counterattack because I know the American's just going to attack me, and they're going to attack me just blindly, just because they need to attack. They need to be attacking because they need to be doing something, or they think they're stalling. And it's like, no, it's like you could lay traps and you could use your strategies and tactics to manipulate the pace and the outcome of the match, because it's like, yeah, the real wrestling is when you get to the positions, right? They are by far superior once they get to the positions because of the amount of time that they've actually spent in the positions compared to the Americans. Americans, we wrestle more long goes. We don't do as much situations, if any at all. And so it's like, one, they have the confidence when they get to the position they're going to win, but it's what leads up into the position is like, no, we force things and we force action, and we are only one-sided. So think about when you're wrestling somebody, you're like, hey, they don't know how to counterattack. They're only going to attack you. How easy is it to wrestle that match when you're like, well, I'm going to wrestle Ryan. He's just going to attack. That's why they used to pick off Metcalf. They're like, that dude ain't waiting for us to attack the counter. He's going to, you know, rain or shine. He's going to show up to that gym and be like, I am freaking attacking from start to finish. And they're just like, okay, I'll just counterattack you the whole time and I'll pick you apart. Because when you're not looking for offense, it's so easy to see things open up defensively.
I feel like it's almost like an ego thing as you're saying it. And I'm like, that's not a manly way to win a match by just sitting back waiting. That's a weird way to look at it, but that is like a weird
art of war. It's not as bad as jiu-jitsu sitting on your ass, but I get what you're saying.
Bro, that is I do like jiu-jitsu, but watching some of those goes, it's like, oh my God,
it's like,
bro.
you really think you're going to like beat a guy by just conceding and sitting on your ass? Like, that's not a good mindset, bud. Like, I try to talk all the guys that I train to, hey, don't sit, man. Like, don't be that guy. Oh, like, but that's what jiu-jitsu, it's like, no, but that's what losers do. You know, like baiting somebody into attacking you to strategically counterattack is not the same thing.
Right.
Conceding the fight on the feet is a bad thing for all the jiu-jitsu people out there. It's terrible. Terrible for the sport.
It is funny because there is a little bit of overlap between wrestling and jiu-jitsu, but not that much. And I thought there was, you know, I first started this podcast, I thought there'd be way more overlap between UFC fans and wrestling fans. And there are some wrestling fans who are UFC fans, but also not nearly as much as I thought.
Yeah, there's not a big connection there. I mean, people like to fight, but you got to know the sport. And wrestling, we don't do ourselves justice because we pushed all those people out because they weren't tough enough. Even though they still like combat sport, they were 5. They just didn't understand it. They're like, well, I'm out. I'm not going to do this.
Now, are you going to NCAA? You are going to NCAAs.
I am, yeah.
And before we transition into a different direction, tell me about the room you're sitting in and the club you're at, and kind of how this all came about. 'Cause that's a sweet facility. Is that a
Yeah,
sauna
so
behind you?
yeah, huge, like 20-person sauna. So yeah, it's crazy, man. So when I left Michigan, there's all these things that happened in my life, you know, like I had a falling out with the Michigan staff. I had a terrible divorce. And so everything fell apart and I just left and I went back to Cleveland for the first time in 20 years. And I was doing web development and I was like, I'm done with this sport. Screw it. You know, like I've had too much stuff happen to me. I was like, nobody cares. And I'm just like, I'm done. And Novogratz told me, you're not done. Jeff Marsh told me, you're not done. And they were talking to DeSena behind the scenes, right? And that's how I ended up getting hooked up. So DeSena was looking for someone to help him Spartan Combat with his kids, which, by the way, his son just placed at national press as a freshman. After wrestling all year at 113, he got bumped out of the lineup and ended up going 120 in place, which is unreal. Super proud of that kid.
At Lake Highland Prep?
Yeah, Charlie DeSena. He's going to be a hammer. But I did a lot of good things with him. I told him no, like he wasn't allowed to train certain times because he didn't like it. And when you tell a kid no, and you're like, well, freestyle, you're too young, it's like it light a little fire up in his ass. But so I was with them for like almost 2 years, and they were going down to Lake Highland. He was moving to all of his businesses because Boston was still like everything was closed and masked and nobody went to work. And so February last year, so it's 23, so February 22, I go down and I start helping out at Lake Highland right before national preps. And they're like, dude, we want you to coach here, like Mike Palazzo, Donnie Simpson. And so I started running their training. I was running their training from February to May. And I was like, all right, well, if you guys want me to do this full time and I'm traveling, like I never thought I was going to be traveling like this again. So like we tried to get the funding and all that stuff to get me there full time. A couple other things fell through. And I told them I'd go through the US Open, and they asked me to go 2 weeks later to Fort Worth for the women's nationals because they have a girl, Mary Manis, and she ended up taking second last year. And so I ended up going down with her and Sarah McLaughlin from Boston. And so I flew with Sarah and her dad. I went to Boston to go because they were still Spartan stuff at the time, closing up. So I went to Boston after the US Open. I flew from Vegas to Boston, and then I flew with Sarah, who actually just won the postseason USA folk style nationals. She's doing really well. She was, I think, 106-pound champion for the girls 16U. But anyway, so I fly with her and her dad, and then I meet Mary and her dad or her mom at the event, and I'm coaching both girls. And I'm like, and I run into Steve Silver, and I was like talking to Steve. I'm like, hey, Steve, like, I know you're from around here. I was like, I gotta, just talking to him. I was like, I gotta get down to Austin for a week. Because after this event, I got to go promote the Spartan race down there. They got a new trail thing, and they want me to be the boots on the ground and get some stuff going. I was like, is there a train? Do I fly? He's like, no, I'll take my truck. I got extra car, go down there. He's like, so where are you at now? And I was telling him, I was like, this is my last event. He goes, man, I just built one of my first warehouses for the furniture. I just converted into a wrestling room. It's not done yet. He goes, but I converted it, hired Mike Ironman. He came down from Missouri, was down here for 6 weeks, ended up not liking it, went back to Missouri. The building kind of sat vacant from like February to March. He's like, when you come back from Austin, why don't you check it out for a week? You could train my grandkids. Because now Steve had Kenny and Kendall at one point coaching his kids, and Bishop Lynch for like 10 years. They were down here, and it made this area really good in wrestling. So now he's got 21 grandkids, and he's looking to restart a club. And he's also now the women's team leader for the next 6 years or 5 years now until 2028. And so he's like, hey, I need a coach. He's like, the job's yours. He's like, I'll give you your salary, benefits. The whole business part is yours for the memberships and privates. And so like, I came down here for 3 days to coach at a tournament, and I never left. Right. I mean, obviously I went to Austin, I traveled, a little bit here and there, but like I came down here for 3 days and ended up taking a job, and now I'm living here. I love it. Like his family's amazing. His siblings and all his grandkids are just great people. And the people that they're bringing to the club and surrounding themselves with are awesome. So I went from not knowing what I was going to do after one event, being like, man, like I kind of got to figure it out, because I got back into wrestling. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then now I have my own facility. I train. I got Will Durkee from Northwestern set me up with some jujitsu guys, and I was training with them. And now they're like, hey, could you help structure our training and get us, because I don't need to know all jujitsu. I can structure the training well enough where I could give them guidance and they could do the nuts and bolts of the technique, but I could put them in all the right situations and guide them through the training to get them ready for the ADCC trials in October. So I got a great group of black belts that I train, some other, lower belts that are awesome. And then I have the high school and little kids. So it's like, I still have the adults I get to train. I train little kids, high school kids. It's awesome, man.
Dude, I got to get down there and see the facility because it looks amazing.
Yeah. And it's awesome too, because you also had Barwis on the podcast, and just with him, he trains people who have been paralyzed, who are learning to walk again, professional athletes, hundreds of them a year, high-level college athletes, high school athletes, little kids, trans parents, all in the same facility, because he's like, he wants all of them to see what all the other people are doing to inspire each other. And I created the same way. They didn't want the second set of mats here. They're like, okay, we're going to get weights and bikes and this and that. I was like, never is there going to be a bike in my room. Never. I'm never going to put a kid on a bike and make him condition. I do that in wrestling. So I was like, no, I want these extra mats that you guys have. And so we kept these extra mats. I put them down. I put those gladiator walls, like those I put the gladiator walls, the bands. I have 2 ropes. I'm getting 2 more ropes, 4 TRX to hang from the ceiling for the rings. And I'm going to get some kettlebells, very light, but kettlebells, maces and clubs just for the shoulders, a couple things for the core, like Bosu balls and med balls. But
no bikes, though?
No bikes. No, heck no. Get out of here. No bikes, no weight equipment other than the kettlebells. It's just going to be functional. So my theory was the Barwis theory. The first hour of practice before the high school kids do their warm-up, because the kids start at 5 to 6:30. So between 5 and 6, the 1,000 square feet of mat is empty. I have 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds playing on the mats. They're not ready for practice. They're playing with the dodgeballs. They're climbing the ropes. They're swinging on the ropes. They're climbing the little ladder wall. I had a little 2-year-old. I'm filming one day just because I was like, this is amazing. His dad's over talking. I'm filming the whole room of all the chaos, and it would make certain coaches crazy. But I'm like, no, this is what I want. I signed up for this. I got a 2-year-old climbing the wall by himself, looking around like, should I be doing this? I got the 4-year-old like swinging on the ropes. And so the parents were like, that's really what you want? I'm like, yes. Now I got dads doing jujitsu down there while their kids are training.
You got a whole ecosystem going.
Amazing. I want mothers to start working out. I want the dads to work out. I want the kids to play. I want the other kids to train on the main mats. And so it's like, I built this whole thing, and it just melted my heart. So like, one of Steve's granddaughters, 4 years old, right? And this is amazing, the learning. And so 4 years old, she was coming in here with her siblings, right? 8 and 6. And then she's 4 sisters too. And so just for her and her sister, because in the early days they didn't have a lot of people coming. So I tied a knot on the rope so they could swing on the bottom, right? Like some people are like, why are you just letting them swing? It's like, I don't care if they're using the workout equipment to play. That's their first step. You learn how to play, you learn how to do, then you learn what it's used for. And so she's swinging on the ropes. After practice, I always make my kids do a circuit. But again, I've told you before, I don't make them do it. I'd say, hey, do 50 burpees, 3 rope climbs, or do push-ups, squats, sit-ups. I'll make them do something little, but I always add 3 rope climbs. So she plays on the ropes for the first hour and 15 minutes. When the kids go do the circuit, she gets bumped off. Not all the kids climb the ropes, but she's sitting right by the ropes, and she's watching these kids climb the ropes from September, October, November, December. What do you want for Christmas, Vivian? Oh, I want a rope. How about you, Violet? I want a rope. The parents are like, Andy, they just asked for 2 ropes for Christmas. So they got 2 ropes for Christmas outside. They hung them up on a tree. So now they have a rope at home. Now she's playing on the ropes. Now it's December. Now January. Now in January, she's like, maybe I've watched kids climb this for the last 4 or 5 months. Out of the blue, she climbs it on her own one day. Boop, 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 boop. She's just watching. Oh, I could do this. Just climbs the rope on her own. No knots, no nothing, no support. Just, I could do it now. And I'm like, wait, what? And then as soon as she climbed the rope, the next day she put a pair of shoes on and she went onto the main mat. I'm like, that's how it's done, folks. That's how you do it. You let them play, you let them see, you let them watch, you let them observe, then they go on the mat. So I have 5-year-old kids. Their parents are like, no, you got to finish practice. I'm like, no, if they're not ready, just go let them play with their siblings on the other mat. Because they could go up. Just how I could take, my training system, you have your oxidative, glycogen, and phosphagen intensities. Well, if you get hurt, you bring it down to the oxidative. Well, if they're little kids not mentally ready or for practice or they need a break, it's like, jump down a level, go play with the little kids. You can always jump back up. You're not missing anything. You're playing, you're around it, you're feeling it, you feel the energy. And it's like, that just melted my heart to have a little 4-year-old girl. And now she does the warm up. She doesn't do practice. She'll do the warm up and then she'll leave because it's an easy, fun thing for them to do. But she's on the mat. And that's all that matters is you got one more person on the mat because you created an environment that was open and fun and let people do things on their own term. And you didn't force them to do it. And now that little girl, she's going to end up being a wrestler and she's going to love it. Right. And I'm going to be able to train her and I'm never going to make her do things she doesn't want to do. And I'm never going to force her and push her. And it's like, at high school, yes. Because at that point, you're telling me, hey, I need somebody to push me. It's like, that's appropriate. Right. But as a child, I'm going to let them be like, hey, do what you want. Like, I'm here to help you push past your fears if you need help, but I'm not going to force you to do it. But that's why I have the room the way I have it. It's amazing. And I get pushback because people see I got kicked out of that Texas State tournament. They're like, that dude's an asshole. That dude's bad for the sport, this and that. It's like, if they only saw me, I don't coach and scream and yell in the corners. Obviously, I've done that at the highest level, but you're motivating people who are making Olympic teams. They're a little different than a 5-year-old. I don't yell and scream at little kids. I don't make them do things for time and intensity. I make them do things right to learn the process, to learn what it takes. And I make them say a pledge. Honestly, these parents, Steve's kids' friends who they're bringing around to these kids' programs, they're not wrestling families, but they don't understand the difference between my program and every other program. Every day, their kids say a pledge. Every single day, they say a pledge to promise to learn one thing, leave better than they started, help somebody else do the same, and have fun doing it. Could you imagine? That is how I run a program. People think I'm nuts, but I run a program that has this growth mindset and a thing where you give back to others and it's inclusive and you're trying to build people up, right? Other programs, you're like, hey, we started with 30, we're down to 13. They pride themselves. It's like, man, are you kidding me? I want to be the guy that said, I started in September with 8 kids. Now I got 20 kids coming consistently at the little kids. And throughout the week, it's probably closer to 30, 35 kids coming in and out because they don't come every day.
Well, and they actually like it, right? It's like, it just reminds me of, I've said this recently, but Adam Terapelli said his goal is for his kids to want to go to the NCAAs with their dad when they're 25 because they actually enjoyed it.
That's another topic, but it's that whole thing. It's no, they definitely enjoy it. And part of that, the same mother who was like, well, when's my kid going to not learn how to lock his hands? Well, if he doesn't compete now, he's going to lose interest. Why is he training? It's like, he's 8. He doesn't know what training is. And this same kid wants to come to practice first because he also loves soccer. We always start with soccer. So he wants to be the first one in the room so he can be the first one playing soccer. Then when I give them to go do their circuit, he finishes his circuit. So around 6:30, 6:35, 40, finishes his circuit. And then him and the other boys are playing soccer and dodgeball. And he's there and for another hour playing on the mats where the high school kids are now. Now I'm training high school kids. And his mom doesn't have a sibling, doesn't have a child in that high school group. And she's like, hey, Declan, we got to go. Declan, we got to go. Declan, come on. Declan, we got to go. Declan, it's dinner. We got to go. Declan, 5, 4. Declan, this is an hour after practice. And Declan, we got to go. 5, 4. And then she's like, oh, he's going to lose interest if he's not competing. I'm like, what part of watching him every day, not wanting to leave this room is you thinking he's going to lose interest. You can't pry him out of here. The one day she had to go pick him up in a fireman's carry because she wrestled herself. She picked him up in a fireman's carry, was holding his arms. She's like, "No, I'm not leaving. I'm playing." And she's holding.
Awesome. Well, it's cool that you're like
going to lose interest.
It's cool that you, one, had the courage to go to Russia for a year. Two, that you've like internalized it and created this system. I know you and Andy, you and Jake for a long time, and you've taken it now, and you're still in it. And you know, it's Spartan, and now with Steve Silver, the man, the best. He's I'm so glad I got to know him through you and through this piece we're doing. Any last words? And before we transition, I just have a few questions on Henry I want to run by you.
No, that's it. You know, like my biggest thing now is like hoping, you know, now I'm in it and I'm not going anywhere. I just want to make the sport even safer for children. You know, we didn't get to talk about it a lot, but you know, I haven't really told a lot of people, but I'm in therapy. I reached out to Mike Novogratz because he does some work in therapy and psychedelic therapy, talk therapy, and he set me up with a talk therapist who deals with childhood trauma, and he set me up with people to do psychedelics and MDMA therapy because, you know, you could look at me and be like, wow, Andy used the sport and got a lot out of it, which I did, but I'm traumatized by the sport. Like, I hate youth events. Like, my dad didn't know what to do. He did everything out of love, but my dad was an asshole. Every single like, it was a joke when I was a kid in my family. Like, Andy's dad got kicked out of another tournament. You know, after Texas, people are like, oh, just like your dad, you're getting kicked out of tournaments. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't yell at my kid. I didn't yell at the official. I didn't yell. I questioned them on the safety of children. And they're like, whoa, we were just joking. I'm like, yeah, but everybody made a joke about it, right? Like, in today's world, my dad would be banned from every organization. He wouldn't have been able to coach me anywhere because of like how bad he was, because he didn't understand it. And so he's yelling at me, yelling at the other coach, yelling at the official every single match. I have this complex. I'm never good enough for anything, right? So I want to make this sport better for kids. I don't think you should be allowed to coach children. I think it should be silent. It's already chaos and they don't know the sport, right? So I want to do things to set a hard stop time so kids aren't wrestling at 11 o'clock at night, so they're not losing a state championship at 11 o'clock at night, and they don't know how to deal with their emotions, and they don't know how to deal with the craziness of all the people yelling. And you go to a wrestling tournament, it's like, that's not how we get people in the sport. You don't need to be crazy at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. You don't have to be crazy at 10, 11 years old. Once you get to middle school, junior high, yeah, you can start learning sport, competing. Yeah, you can start competing in high school. But we have these minds, and we have, you know, we want to have this wrestling mindset, but we have fragile minds, right? And it's like, you don't realize the impact of what you're having on a child when you're yelling at them, and you make them feel like they're not good enough. And I had that kid tell me he's not good enough for college. It's like, man, that's me. You know, that's me as a kid, and I see his dad, and I'm trying to work with his dad. I'm trying to work with him to be like, look, we don't need this mindset. We don't need these expectations. I told the dad, just like Terry Pally, I said, I need you to have a relationship with your dad. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad after college and after the Olympics, right? He just passed away, and it's sad, right? But he never worked on himself, and he never brought it up, right? And it's like, how do you bring it up? Because it's like, my whole family's proud of what they did and what I accomplished, because they were able to provide for me and give me all the opportunity for college, Olympics, international, and like my whole career. It's like, yeah, it did a lot for me, but at the same time, it messed me up a lot, right? It's like, and you know, honestly, it's ruined 2 marriages, right? Because I didn't know how to be in a loving relationship without having that expectation of I'm never good enough, right? Because when you're a child and you have that father, and nothing you ever do is good enough on the mat, because every time you go out there, he's yelling, he's upset at you, he's upset at the official, he's upset at the other coach. Everything is something out of your control. It's like, no, look, I just did what I did. Just love me, right? And so I don't know how to be in those relationships, and it's terrible. But we have a big problem in our sport with mental health, and we have a big problem with people perpetuating their mental health onto the next generations of people. I know coaches that definitely need therapy at the college level, and definitely take things out on their own kids, not their kids, but the kids that they coach. They take it out on them, and they put them through the same hell that they went through, because they've never had to internalize and be like, look, that wasn't good for me and it's not good for these people, because we think we're tough and we have to be tough and we have to chew each other up and spit them out and just grind it. And it's like, no, man, like we need relationships with our parents and we need to be sane in this sport and we need things to be safe for the kids, because that's the only way the sport flourishes and that's the only way the sport becomes mainstream, because as is, it's never going to be mainstream because it's too hard. It's too hard for people, but it can be, right? But you have to have the mindset of like, hey, it's not about the sport being hard. It's about teaching the sport. It's not about intensity. It's about teaching it. It's about giving people a skill set. It's about getting people to do things that they've never thought they were going to be able to do in their life. And then when they want to compete, then it's about pushing them and challenging them.
Mm-hmm.
We need to introduce people. We need to have a safe sport for children, not just on the coach's side, but on the competition side.
Almost like how jiu-jitsu structures it as self-defense. Like there's millions of people who do jiu-jitsu that never compete in a tournament, but there's very few wrestlers that wrestle and don't compete in a tournament.
Correct.
It could be the opposite though, right? It could be like there's like a subset of kids that they just like doing it because they're in good shape and they're able to defend themselves and they have some confidence with them.
I had one novice compete. I wouldn't let them. None of my kids. I'm like, don't. I told the parents I'm not coaching them at local tournaments. I went to the Fort Worth tournament because there's a regional tournament, and I went to the state tournament because I got a couple other kids, like the middle school kids that I trained, like the 7th, 8th graders. I went to coach them, right? I had a couple 11, 12-year-olds, but they were already in the system of competing. I would never take my kids at 8 and be like, hey, we're going to Tulsa. We're doing this. I'm teaching you skill sets. I'm going to make you the best wrestler. And, like everybody wants to forget, like Zach Thompson, who I went to high school with. He didn't start wrestling until high school. He wrestled 4 years at St Eds and then ended up second in the country at Iowa State, 2-time All-American. It's like, come on. And he lost in the blood round to Varing, who beat him the year before in the finals his senior year. He could have been 3-time All-American. Him and Varing end up losing. They face each other in the blood round. They were in the finals the year before. It's like, come on. Dude never wrestled before. It's like, you don't need it.
That's crazy.
Right? It's like
crazy. Brian Piccolo's another example of that, man. He didn't wrestle until like third year of college.
Wow.
Yeah, Michigan State. I'm thinking of I think it's Brian Piccolo. His kids, I get his kid confused. His kids at Oklahoma. Right. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's all it's good stuff to think about, and it's a reframe from how at least 20 years ago. I think back, man, when I was going through, I was a senior in high school in 2007. So I've been realizing lately that all my memories are almost 20 years old of like kids wrestling, because I had Donovan Panone, a club coach on from Georgia who runs Level Up. And he's explaining to me the concept of doubling up. And I don't remember anyone ever entering 2 divisions or 2 weight classes. That was not a thing when I was going through it. See, we never did that in Illinois. That was not a thing.
10, you're 9 and 10 and 11 and 12.
I don't know if it was just an Illinois thing, but no one did that. And I'm glad, but I don't ever remember anyone ever doing that. Maybe if you were a stud, you're like, let's say you're 12, but you're a killer. Maybe you wrestle 13 and 14, but you're only wrestling 13 and 14. You're not doing double entries.
Right. No, it's stupid. It's stupid. Like looking back,
I wouldn't recommend it.
No, looking back, it's so dumb. Like I would definitely never recommend that. It
seems a little excessive. Like it's just
Well, that's also the whole point too. Like with my training system, every day we get prepared to wrestle 1 match. You get 1 match to start the tournament. You get 1 match in a tournament. You got to be ready for your 1 match. In the American system, they're like, hey, we're going to wrestle 6 matches today. So if you don't wrestle good in your first match, you get a second match. Oh, you don't wrestle good there, you get a 3rd match. You get a 4th and 5th match. If you don't wrestle good in your first 5 matches, we'll give you a 6th one today. And if you wrestle good there, you can leave practice feeling great about yourself. No, it's like, how many do-overs do we get in America?
I was reading an article from the 2008 Olympic camp, the Greco team, and it was like a day in the life. And for that practice that day, they did an 1.5-hour grind match. And I'm thinking, like, I bet the Russian Greco team is wrestling a 6-minute match and that's it. I bet they're not wrestling an 1.5-hour match.
No. And they spent so much time in all the real positions. We're like, you wrestle for an 1.5 hours. How many of just hand fighting? It's like, get out of here. That's why we can't win. That's why last year at the Greco trials, I saw a guy hand fight and got the double unders, got his hands locked. It was like, I actually don't want to be here. And he let go. He let go and backed out. And I was like, what was he hand fighting for? He was literally hand fighting the hand fight, because if he was hand fighting to get to the position, he had an amazing position with double over unders, and he just let it go. He was like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to actually wrestle in a position. I just wanted to fight.
Well, man, I'm hoping you put this stuff down on video for those of us who aren't in Texas. But until then, man, well, guess we'll just have to get down to Texas and see the magic you got going. Tell Steve Silver I give him my best, man, and I appreciate you sharing all of this, just your thoughts on youth development and how you approach it differently, man. It's exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm an anomaly. People think I'm an asshole. I ruffle feathers, but I do it all for the love of the sport and for other kids. I've never done this to make myself wealthy.
Bro, since I've met you, you've only introduced me to people and helped wrestling people get more in touch. So I don't see how it could be any other way, man. So I just want to say thanks for coming on. And it's the mental health stuff you talked about at the end, it's right up the alley with Chance Marsteller, man. That whole, I just went down that rabbit hole last week, and I think there's a lot more mental health problems in wrestling than we have not that we have an idea that we talk about, though.
Yeah. And a lot of it, which is really sad, is the mental health problems that lead to substance abuse problems. And those people just get chewed up in our sport. And it's like they become a circus show. And it's like, man,
lepers, like outskirts.
Yeah. I mean, they literally become court jesters, in the sport. And it's like, you don't want to see that. And you just want people to be healthy. And, I'm obviously on my own mental health journey, and it sucks. Because it's lonely, but I think the sport needs more of it, and I would love to come back on and talk more about.
Yes, we'll do that. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot of stigmas around it, and it's important to break some of those down.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, especially in wrestling. They're like, you're in talk therapy. It's like, yeah, man. Like, I was tortured as a child.
Right.
That wasn't all of it.
I'd love to have you back on to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, and then part of it too wasn't just that, but I was abused by a teacher at the same time at around 8 years old, and it's like it wasn't good,
Right.
So it's the whole mind when it's forming the most is so off key, and then it's like you float through life, and then you're in trouble. But
I feel you on a lot of that stuff, man, and I know a lot of people who've not just wrestlers, but that's what we're thinking about here, who struggle with that stuff even now. And we'll enjoy practice, and we'll talk to you soon, brother.